The secret number for Lesson 4 is 172. Lesson 4, the rules of good singing. I wish I could say that I came up with these rules, but they are actually spliced together from a lot of different experiences I've had, both singing individually and also in choirs, as well as being a professor of choral music for many years. So basically these rules is that the idea is you do not have to think about how every piece of music is different in terms of interpretation. You can take these rules and apply them to any piece of music, and they give you a framework to be able to figure out how to sing them musically without having to think of every specific phrase as being an event and something different than the one before it. One of the things that's important as you're going through this is to realize is that if you're trying to do this without sheet music, some of these bits of rules will not make as much sense, especially if you're using lyrics from some online source which then don't have some of these pieces of information. So use these as best as you can if you're not using sheet music, but we're going to use the sheet music, The Water is Wide, as an example to be able to demonstrate what these different rules will do. The rule of punctuation is simple in the fact that what you want to do is anytime you see a punctuation, which is a comma or a period or other type of punctuation, you want to give that as a moment of either pause or a moment of breath. Now, this does not mean that every time you see a comma that you have to take a breath. It does mean that you have some idea that that's where the breaths are going to occur, or that you know that there's some kind of a pause in the way that the text is supposed to be communicated at that moment. Musically, there's a lot of situations where the singers will just follow what is in the music in terms of if there's a rest, then I'll take a breath there. But then what if there isn't a rest for a while? Well, where do I breathe? Well, the rule of punctuation gives you one piece of information for that. Other ways to make sure that as you're thinking about the text and the way that you communicate the text, that really is going to give you a lot of the information in terms of how to sing it musically. The rule of text emphasis, where you're trying to figure out, okay, so what is the most important word of the phrase, and I want to grow towards that word and then dissipate away from it afterwards. For example, in the first phrase of The Water is Wide, if I make I the most important word, it sounds like this. Oh, the water is wide, I cannot cross o'er. On top of that, the rule of the steady beat being that if you have a steady beat, and let's say it's like this, and I use the same phrase, any note longer than that has to go somewhere, get louder or softer. Oh, the water is wide, I cannot cross o'er. Now, one of the problems a lot of singers have is that they don't think about this, and then it becomes very boring to listen to. Example A. Oh, the water is wide, I cannot cross o'er. Most people have already tuned me out. So you want to think about it as always being a journey through music in terms of musical phrases versus destinations along the way. Another extreme example of that, if I made it not very journey at all and just made it destinations, it would sound like this. Oh, the water is wide, I cannot cross o'er. You want to avoid that unless it's being used as a particular musical idea in a particular phrase. The rule of syllabic stress is very important too, because we want to make sure that the music is communicating what the words mean, and if you put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable, it's very hard to understand. The wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable, it's very hard to understand. Now, we think about it when we're speaking, that sounds ridiculous. But when people think about it when they sing, they totally forget that. And they think, okay, a higher note means that it must be louder, and a lower note must means it's softer. But what if the notes are not along with the actual words? For example, if I sang, oh, the water is wide, that doesn't make sense. Oh, the water is wide makes more sense. And again, that applies to if you're singing it in any way, shape, or form, you want the syllabic stresses, the way you speak it, to fit. A technique you can use is always think about speaking the words to the text and thinking about, okay, what's the most important word of this phrase as I speak it? Well, if I change it, that could change this. Or the water is wide, I cannot cross o'er. Or the water is wide, I cannot cross o'er. Or the water is wide, I cannot cross o'er. So you can experiment, and what you'll notice is that if you change the way the phrase goes in terms of which word is more important, that changes the way that you sing it, which then in turn changes the interpretation to the audience, and you can apply this to any genre of music. So you want to try and figure out what it is that you think is most important, and then lead to that word and away from it.